September 7, 2009. A young woman stops at Walmart for one simple reason: dog food. Hours later, she is found dying inside her own car in a Texas parking lot. Surveillance cameras capture a stranger following her through the store. But what happened next would become one of the most disturbing criminal cases Cedar Park had ever seen. Nearly a decade would pass before a jury finally decided whether the man seen on camera was responsible for Jessica Kaer's death. If you enjoy true crime documentaries and real investigations, subscribe to Real Crime Pulse and turn on notifications for more gripping cases. On the night of September 6, 2009, Jessica Kaer was doing something she had done many times before: looking out for other people. While many young adults spent their weekends focused on having fun, Jessica had volunteered to be the designated driver for her friends. It was a simple decision, but it reflected exactly who she was: responsible, dependable, and always willing to put the needs of others ahead of her own. Long before her name became associated with a tragic criminal case, Jessica was known as a hardworking young woman with clear goals and a strong sense of purpose. She was not someone drifting through life without direction. She had dreams, plans, and a future she was actively working toward. Jessica attended Texas State University, where she earned a degree and prepared for the career she had always wanted. Her goal was to become an elementary school teacher, particularly for 3rd and 4th grade students. Those years were important to her because they represented a time when children were developing confidence, curiosity, and independence. Jessica believed she could make a difference in their lives. Friends and family later described her as patient, caring, and naturally supportive. Teaching was not simply a career choice for Jessica, it matched her personality. She enjoyed helping people, encouraging them, and creating positive experiences for those around her. Unfortunately, graduating from college did not immediately lead to the future she had imagined. During that period, many school districts in Texas were facing financial challenges. Hiring opportunities were limited, and teaching positions were difficult to secure. Like many recent graduates across the country, Jessica found herself working hard while waiting for the opportunity she had trained for. Instead of giving up, she adapted. Jessica worked retail jobs and focused on paying her bills, including her student loans. She continued moving forward, believing that eventually the right opportunity would arrive. Those who knew her admired that determination. Even when life became frustrating, she remained focused on her long-term goals. Her best friend, Rhonda Garza, later told investigators that Jessica wanted a simple and stable future. She hoped to build meaningful relationships, establish a successful career, and create a life based on honesty and trust. She was not attracted to drama or risky situations. She preferred stability, consistency, and genuine connections. That reliability made Jessica someone others could always count on. If friends needed help, she was there. If someone needed a ride, she volunteered. If responsibility needed to be taken, Jessica often stepped forward without hesitation. On the evening of September 6th, she went out with friends, but unlike many people at the gathering, she was not there to drink. She had agreed to be the designated driver. Throughout the night, she safely transported friends and family members, making sure each person got home without incident. Her cousin and close friend, Melanie Lopez Kilpatrick, would later say that this behavior was completely typical of Jessica. Taking care of people was simply part of who she was. It was one of the qualities that made her so respected by those who knew her best. As the night came to an end, Jessica completed the final drop-off and began heading home. Her responsibilities for the evening were finished. Soon, she would be back with her dog, ready to get some rest before returning to her normal routine. But during that drive home, Jessica remembered something important. She needed dog food. What seemed like an ordinary errand would become the final decision she ever made freely. By the early hours of September 7, 2009, Jessica Kaer had already done what she set out to do that evening. She had spent hours making sure her friends got home safely, driving them from place to place while remaining sober and responsible. For most people, the night would have ended there. They would have gone home, locked the door, and gone to bed. Jessica should have done the same. After dropping off the last friend, she began the drive back home through the Austin area. It was late. The roads were quieter than usual, and after a long night, she was likely ready to finally relax. But somewhere during that drive, she remembered something important. She was out of dog food. For many people, it would have seemed like a small inconvenience that could wait until morning. But Jessica was known for taking care of the things that mattered to her. She decided to make one quick stop before heading home. That decision led her to a Walmart in Cedar Park, Texas. The store sat along a busy commercial corridor north of Austin, a place that remained active even during the late-night hours. Bright lights illuminated the parking lot. Customers moved in and out through the automatic doors, and employees continued their shifts as they always did. It was the kind of location where people felt comfortable running errands at almost any hour. Nothing about the stop appeared unusual. Jessica entered the store and walked through the aisles, searching for the items she needed. According to investigators, her actions were completely normal. She was simply completing a routine errand before returning home. What Jessica did not know was that someone else inside the store had apparently noticed. Her surveillance cameras captured another customer that night, a man later identified as Crispin Harl. At first, nothing about his presence seemed remarkable. Like everyone else inside the store, he appeared to be going about his own business. But as investigators later reviewed the footage, they became increasingly interested in his movements. According to court records and testimony presented years later, cameras showed Harl inside the Walmart around the same time as Jessica. More importantly, the footage appeared to show him paying attention to her movements inside the store. Jessica remained completely unaware. She finished shopping, paid for her items, and prepared to leave. Like countless customers before her, she walked through the exit doors and headed toward her vehicle in the parking lot. The surveillance footage continued recording. As Jessica crossed the parking lot alone, cameras captured Harl leaving the store behind her. Investigators later argued that there was no indication the two people knew one another. There was no greeting, no conversation, and no visible interaction suggesting they had arranged to meet. Instead, prosecutors would later describe something far more troubling. According to the evidence presented at trial, Harl followed Jessica through the parking lot as she approached her car. The distance between them remained close enough to draw attention from investigators reviewing the footage years later. For Jessica, it appeared to be nothing more than the final moments of a routine shopping trip. She reached her vehicle and got inside. The parking lot remained brightly lit. Businesses nearby continued operating. Cars moved through the area. Nothing looked out of place, yet according to investigators, those ordinary moments marked the beginning of a nightmare. Somewhere in that Walmart parking lot, a routine trip for dog food was about to become the starting point of one of the most disturbing criminal cases Cedar Park had ever seen. What happened after Jessica Kaer got into her car remains one of the most disturbing parts of the entire case. Much of what investigators later presented came from surveillance footage, digital evidence, witness testimony, and information gathered during the years-long investigation that followed. Moments earlier, Jessica had been shopping for dog food at Walmart. It was supposed to be a quick stop before heading home. Instead, prosecutors would later argue that a stranger had targeted her inside the store and followed her into the parking lot. According to the prosecution's reconstruction of events, once Jessica entered her vehicle, Crispin Harl allegedly climbed into the back seat. Investigators believed Jessica had no reason to expect anyone was there. She had been alone, focused on finishing her errand and returning home. The next series of events would dramatically alter the course of her life. Prosecutors later argued that Jessica was attacked inside her vehicle and that Harl used her own seatbelt to choke her. Medical evidence presented during the investigation would eventually show that Jessica suffered a severe lack of oxygen to the brain, an injury with devastating consequences. But at that moment, the ordeal was only beginning. According to investigators, Jessica was forced to drive away from the Walmart parking lot. Prosecutors alleged that her attacker directed her to a nearby ATM. There, Jessica withdrew $20, the final amount of money available in her account. Unfortunately for investigators, one potentially important piece of evidence was unavailable: The ATM camera system was reportedly not functioning at the time, meaning there was no surveillance footage showing exactly what occurred during that stop. From there, prosecutors argued that Jessica was taken to a nearby park. The allegations presented during trial described a horrifying sequence of events. Investigators concluded that Jessica was sexually assaulted and subjected to further violence. Medical findings later supported the conclusion that she had experienced a serious attack that left her critically injured. Most importantly, the strangulation caused severe brain damage. Experts would later explain that the injury affected Jessica's ability to think clearly, understand her surroundings, and make decisions. While she remained alive, her ability to protect herself or seek assistance had been dramatically reduced. Afterward, prosecutors argued that Jessica was driven back toward the Walmart area. Instead of receiving medical help, she was left inside her own vehicle. Surveillance footage later showed a man investigators identified as Harl leaving Jessica's car and walking back across the Walmart parking lot. The footage then captured him returning to his own truck and leaving the area. According to investigators, he departed at approximately 2:57 in the morning. What happened next became another important part of the timeline. A short time after leaving the parking lot, Jessica's debit card was reportedly used at a nearby gas station. Prosecutors argued that the card was used by Harl after he left Jessica behind. Meanwhile, Jessica remained inside her vehicle. Although she was still alive, investigators later concluded that the brain injury caused by the attack had left her unable to fully understand what was happening around her. The woman who had spent the evening safely driving friends home was now alone, critically injured and unable to help herself. As darkness slowly gave way to morning, traffic began increasing throughout Cedar Park. Businesses prepared to open, employees headed to work, and another ordinary day was beginning. Inside a parked vehicle near the Walmart, however, Jessica was fighting a battle nobody around her could see, and with every passing hour, the danger she faced was growing worse. As the sun began rising over Cedar Park on the morning of September 7, 2009, Jessica Kaer was still alive. What makes this case so heartbreaking is that Jessica was not immediately found dead after the attack. Instead, investigators later determined that she survived for hours. During that time, she remained trapped inside a devastating situation, one that few people around her fully understood. According to medical testimony presented during the case, the strangulation had caused severe oxygen deprivation to Jessica's brain. The injury did not kill her immediately, but it significantly damaged her ability to think, reason, and make decisions. She could still move. She could still perform simple actions. But according to experts, she could no longer process information the way a healthy person could. As morning traffic increased around the Walmart area, Jessica's vehicle remained parked nearby. To passing drivers and pedestrians, it likely looked like just another car sitting in a commercial parking lot. No one could see the crisis unfolding inside. Around 9:30 that morning, a woman named Christina Wilson arrived for work at a nearby Little Caesars restaurant. As she walked toward the building, something caught her attention. Inside a parked vehicle, she noticed a woman in the back seat. The woman appeared confused and disoriented. Christina later recalled seeing her moving awkwardly and attempting to climb toward the front of the vehicle. At the time, she did not know the woman was Jessica Kaer. She had no knowledge of the violent attack that investigators would later uncover. From a distance, the behavior appeared unusual but not necessarily criminal. Like many people confronted with an unfamiliar situation, Christina tried to make sense of what she was seeing. She later explained that she believed the woman might be experiencing a personal crisis, or possibly be under the influence of something, not wanting to interfere. She continued into work. As the morning progressed, Christina saw Jessica multiple times. At one point, Jessica was sitting alone outside the vehicle. Later, she appeared back inside the car. According to testimony, she seemed confused and disconnected from her surroundings. The behavior was noticeable, but no one understood the true reason behind it. What witnesses were seeing was the devastating effect of a severe brain injury. Hours earlier, Jessica had been a healthy, independent young woman, capable of making decisions and caring for herself. Now, according to prosecutors, she lacked the ability to recognize the danger she was in or take the steps necessary to save herself. Meanwhile, concern was growing among the people who knew her. Jessica failed to arrive at work. For many employees, being late occasionally might not seem unusual. For Jessica, it immediately raised concerns. Friends and coworkers knew she was dependable. If she was running behind schedule, she usually let people know. This time there was only silence. As concern spread, family members and friends began trying to contact her. Calls went unanswered. Messages received no response. Among those growing increasingly worried was her cousin and close friend, Melanie Lopez Kilpatrick. The longer the silence continued, the more certain Melanie became that something was wrong. Determined to find answers, she began searching for Jessica herself. Eventually, that search led her to the area near Walmart. There she found Jessica's vehicle. The windows were closed. Jessica was slumped inside. As Melanie rushed toward the car and called her name, a terrible reality was beginning to unfold. The friend who had spent the previous night making sure everyone else got home safely was now fighting for her own life. And despite surviving the attack, time was running out. By the afternoon of September 7, 2009, what had begun as a missing person concern had become a homicide investigation. Jessica Kaer had been found inside her vehicle after hours in the Texas heat, and investigators were now faced with a difficult task, determining exactly who was responsible and proving it beyond a reasonable doubt. Fortunately, detectives had something many investigations never receive: surveillance footage. From the very beginning, cameras played a crucial role in establishing a timeline. Investigators quickly obtained Walmart security recordings and began reviewing Jessica's final known movements. The footage showed her entering the store shopping alone and later walking back toward her vehicle. More importantly, the recordings captured another person. The same man seen inside the store appeared to leave shortly after Jessica and walk in the same direction across the parking lot. Detectives focused their attention on identifying him. As investigators examined additional footage, they observed the man later returning across the parking lot and heading toward a pickup truck. The timeline immediately made him a person of interest. Police released images from the surveillance recordings and asked the public for help identifying the owner of the truck seen in the area. The response came quickly. Multiple tips pointed detectives toward the same individual, Crispin Harrell. When investigators brought Harrell in for questioning, he agreed to speak with them. He answered questions, participated in interviews, and even allowed police to search his vehicle. At first glance, his willingness to cooperate appeared helpful. However, as detectives began comparing his statements to the evidence, inconsistencies started emerging. Harrell claimed that he and Jessica had arranged to meet through an adult website. According to his version of events, their encounter had been planned and consensual. He suggested that Jessica had contacted him online before the incident. Investigators immediately began trying to verify that claim. They searched Jessica's digital records, including her computer, storage devices, and available phone data. Detectives looked for evidence that she had ever created an account on the website Harrell described. They found nothing. No membership records, no messages, no communications, and no indication that Jessica had interacted with Harrell before that night. Friends and family members were equally skeptical. People who knew Jessica described her as focused, responsible, and private. Several witnesses later testified that the explanation simply did not fit the person they knew. Meanwhile, detectives continued examining other parts of Harrell's story. Additional witnesses provided information that contradicted details he had given investigators. As more statements were collected, prosecutors became increasingly convinced that the evidence pointed toward a very different sequence of events than the one Harrell described. Years later, another significant discovery added to the case. Advances in digital forensic technology allowed investigators to conduct a more detailed review of phone records and electronic data. During that process, authorities uncovered evidence showing that on September 8, 2009, the day after Jessica was found, Harrell had searched her name online and viewed news coverage related to her death. To prosecutors, that discovery was important. They argued it demonstrated an unusual interest in a case involving a woman he claimed to barely know. Combined with the surveillance footage and other evidence, investigators believed it strengthened their overall case. On December 4, 2009, Harl was arrested, yet despite the arrest, prosecutors faced a major challenge. There was no DNA evidence directly linking him to the crime. There were no fingerprints placing him inside Jessica's vehicle. There was no traditional forensic evidence that many jurors often expect to see in a murder case. As a result, prosecutors would need to build their case using surveillance footage, digital evidence, witness testimony, and the timeline investigators had spent years piecing together. The battle for justice was only beginning, and the courtroom fight ahead would last nearly a decade. By the time Crispin Harl's case reached trial, nearly 5 years had passed since Jessica Kaer's death. For her family and friends, those years had been filled with court hearings, legal motions, and the painful process of reliving the details of what happened during Jessica's final hours. Many believed they were finally approaching answers. In 2014, the first trial began in Williamson County, Texas. Prosecutors presented evidence they believed showed exactly how Jessica's final hours unfolded. The defense challenged that narrative and focused heavily on one issue: the lack of physical forensic evidence. There was no DNA linking Harl to Jessica's body. There were no fingerprints placing him inside her vehicle. There were no fibers or other traditional forensic clues connecting him directly to the crime scene. For the defense, this became the centerpiece of their strategy. However, before jurors could reach a verdict, the trial took an unexpected turn. A dispute emerged involving surveillance footage from Walmart. Specifically, questions arose regarding timestamp information that had not been properly disclosed to the defense before trial. The issue became serious enough that the judge ultimately declared a mistrial. Just like that, years of preparation ended without a verdict. For Jessica's family, the decision was devastating. After waiting so long for justice, they were forced to begin the process all over again. The man prosecutors accused of killing Jessica walked out of court without a conviction, and the family faced the painful reality of waiting several more years for another trial. The delay stretched on until 2018. Nearly 9 years had passed since Jessica stopped at Walmart to buy dog food. During the retrial, prosecutors rebuilt the case from the beginning. They reminded jurors who Jessica was before her death: a college graduate, a hardworking young woman, and someone who dreamed of becoming an elementary school teacher. They argued that Jessica had not gone to Walmart to meet anyone. She had simply stopped to run an errand before going home. The prosecution focused on surveillance footage, witness testimony, digital evidence, and medical findings. Their argument was straightforward. Without the attack and resulting brain injury, Jessica would have been capable of helping herself. She could have sought assistance, called emergency services, or entered one of the nearby businesses for help. According to prosecutors, that ability had been taken from her. The defense continued emphasizing the lack of physical forensic evidence. They argued that investigators could not directly place Harl inside Jessica's vehicle using DNA or fingerprints. Jurors listened carefully as both sides presented their cases. They also heard emotional testimony from people whose lives had been permanently changed by Jessica's death. Friends, family members, investigators, and witnesses described the impact of losing someone known for her kindness, reliability, and compassion. After closing arguments concluded, jurors began deliberating. Hours later, on May 22, 2018, they reached a decision. Crispin Harl was found guilty of capital murder during the commission or attempted commission of kidnapping, robbery, or aggravated sexual assault. Because prosecutors did not seek the death penalty, Texas law required an automatic sentence, life in prison without the possibility of parole. Harl later appealed the conviction, but the appeal was denied. His conviction remained in place. For Jessica's family, the verdict could never erase what happened. It could never restore the future she had worked so hard to build. The classroom she hoped to teach in, the life she planned to create, and the years she should have enjoyed were all taken away. Yet after nearly a decade of waiting, the verdict provided something they had been seeking for years: accountability. Jessica Kaer should have made it home that night. Instead, a simple stop for dog food became the final chapter of her life. Her story remains a reminder of how quickly an ordinary moment can become a tragedy, and why her memory continues to be remembered by those who loved her. If you enjoy true crime documentaries, subscribe to Real Crime Pulse and turn on notifications for more real investigations.